Talk with a former drug dealer whose base of operation was San Francisco's Tenderloin District. It was at the first national conference on the black family and crack cocaine that Walter Redding was moved to go public with his story. The conference was organized by the Glide Church and its pastor, the Reverend Cecil Williams, as a part of the church's ongoing drug rehabilitation program. It was through this program that Reverend Williams got involved with Redding, who had been arrested on drug charges and was facing a stiff prison term.
Walt came to me and wanted me to write a letter in his behalf. Well, I knew Walt was into some stuff, see? And I said, no, I don't want to write no letter. No. Then I said to her, let me think about this. Can you trust me?
Despite his initial reluctance, Reverend Williams intervened with the district attorney and got Redding out of jail and out of his life of crime.
I wrote the letter, and then the DA called me and said, Cecil, you know what you're getting into? I said, yeah, but I made a decision. I said, I want that man.
Redding's life of crime started 3 years ago when he arrived in San Francisco from Chicago. He has a degree in psychology, but he said he couldn't find a job and that had made him more vulnerable to the drug business. He's now a consultant to the Glide Church's drug rehabilitation program. Redding told us how he was introduced to the drug business by a teenager.
I was approached on the street by a minor, approximately around 14 years old, to watch her back while she sold drugs. And she would give me something like maybe $100 for 2 hours work. It's obvious what type of ethics I had at that time. I was out of work. I was pretty much frustrated. Not trying to make that as an excuse, but those were the reasons why I did it. And I said, well, if I'm not going to have any drugs on me, and I can alert you when police are around in the neighborhood, $100 for a couple hours of work would be great for me.
And that's how it started?
That's how it started. I started being a lookout for a minor.
Then
it went on for a couple of weeks. At the end of the week, 7 days, I had $700. At the end of 14 days, I had $1,400. So what I decided to do was take some of the money and invest it in the product that she was selling. She arranged for me to meet a supplier. I discontinued my work for her, and I worked myself and hired lookouts for myself. I secured myself an ounce of crack at the price of about $600 at that time. I cut it up into about between 35 and 50 $20 rocks and commenced to distribute it to runners. These are people that were basically crackheads or pipeheads who smoked more than anything else. That's all they cared about. But I can employ them for a menial fee, maybe a half a rock, to sell anywhere from between $200 to $2,000 worth of crack in a day's time for me. So I proceeded to hire different runners, and when they would get busted, they would never snitch on me or anything. So after that, I started associating with other dealers, and I learned the different spots, the different methods of dealing, which I didn't agree with too much because to me I saw vulnerability in their program. So what I did was went to the library. I didn't have a library card, so I wasn't able to get the books, so I hired some of the pipeheads to go steal the books for me on criminal arrest procedures and things like that, and I did a lot of personal research on it, went through all of the legal loopholes and devised a plan for myself and my staff to how to get around some of the police arrests and different things and hassling the police. And I also started to train my staff to train other people and to recruit different youngsters and everything. In fact, I just built a business off of it. From that point on, I did an in-depth research on ways to approach people, to break down their value systems, ways to help create difficult situations in their lives, and then seemingly rescuing them out of these situations monetarily and making them feel like they owed me a favor and seducing them into letting me rent or lease their children or them and themselves for my purposes.
What was driving you?
The prospect of having more money and more power over other people.
Is that what attracted you to drug dealing? Was it just the money?
Basically, the attraction was the money initially in my particular case. But what I discovered later was there must have been some type of void of emptiness in me, in my personality structure as far as emotions are concerned, because I felt a sense of false importance and status after I began to deal, and I could dangle a rock of crack in front of a woman or anybody and have them to jump through loopholes if I wanted to, anything I wanted them to do.
You mean drug dealers are generally that calculating?
That's why it's so hard to break the addictive cycle, not so much as, it's just as hard to break the addictive cycle as the smoker, but it's even harder, in my experience, to break my addictive cycle as a seller, because the things that I get from it are more intangible, as far as rather than just the feeling of euphoria. I got a lot more in the sense of a false sense of reinforced and heightened self-worth, a sense of godliness and superiority, a sense of ten-upmanship over other people, a sense of total control. I was like a crack Hitler.
You have a background in psychology?
I have a BA in clinical psychology.
There seems to be a common wisdom out there that it's the lure of the money for poor, underprivileged, unskilled black kids that brings them into the drug business. That wasn't your problem. You didn't need drugs. I mean, you had a degree.
Yeah, but what job or corporation or corporate director in America could give me the type of money I could make from drugs in one day? Why should I go punch a clock and hold a title, legitimate title, and wait a week or 2 weeks to get a few $100s when I can make thousands a day? And I could be the director.
What turned all that around?
I was coming to pick up my money from my daughters. The workers had been paid off, my daughters had the cash, and we had some leftover merchandise, drugs. Somebody snitched. The police rolled down on us, arrested my daughters. They arrested me, took us all down, and booked me on sales and on getting my daughters to sell too. I was already on 3 years probation, so that was a charge plus a probation violation, which would have got me about 5 years and 8 months in San Quentin.
What did jail represent and that type of sentence?
In a way, I look forward to going to jail. For one reason, because jail is an informal university. I figured I could augment my knowledge and my skill as far as the dope game goes from others in jail.
What finally changed your thinking about the life you were leading?
I realized when I would come to the visiting room to see my wife, sometimes some of the people that I would serve or some of the people's parents that I had serving for me would be there visiting someone else. And I would witness the ruin in them. And I felt twangs of guilt when I would go back to the cell. And it started getting to me because I didn't have that power trip anymore. I wasn't actively in it like I was when I was on the street. So I started looking at myself a lot closer and looking at the methods that I used on people, and it forced me to focus on myself. It forced me to look at myself, and I decided to try to change my life around. At that point, I realized the one thing that was most important to me was my happiness and my family's happiness.
Was anyone in jail helping you, counseling you?
You must be in a joking mood now, because there's no such thing as, only counselors in jail are the ones incarcerated like I was. They have counselors, psychiatric counselors for people that's deemed crazy or unbalanced. But as far as dealing with a crack problem, a dealer, especially a dealer, I don't know of any program in America outside of the one that was just established here at Glide Church that addresses problems of a dealer, which I was having problems with at that time, so there was no one I could talk to.
How hard is it now for you to stay out of the drug game?
It's a lot easier than I anticipated. At first, when I got out of jail, oh, by the way, I didn't get out of jail Glad Church and the Reverend Cecil Williams rescued me from certain damnation, because if I had gone to jail, I'd have been 10 times worse when I got back out. Reverend Williams intervened in my behalf through the district attorney's office, pulled me up out of there, got me downstairs, and told me, look, man, I'm aware of your potentials. You got to turn this around. You told me you're going to turn yourself around. You haven't been a good father. We both know that. You had the potential to do it. You have caused great destruction to this community. But by your attitude now and the direction that you're going, we can use you to help reconstruct and help rebuild things that you've taken from the community, which was absolutely true. So I decided that this is what I was going to do, and I have a great support group in Glad Church, not only at home, but right here within the church. If it not be for the support group within the church, I'd have been selling drugs again a long time ago, because I've got half ounces and ounces just literally thrown in my lap.
How heavy is that pressure? I mean, do you get tempted?
I'm tempted all the time, because from what I get, the wages that I earn as a consultant and a counselor here at Glad Church are feeble compared to the amounts of money that I made on the streets. Before I got here this morning, I was approached by somebody right there in the park, said, you're still trying to fight it. I don't know what you're wasting your time and your energies and your talent for. You were born to be a crack dealer and the best one. Why not be true to your destiny?
If you could advise Drug Control Director Bennett on a course of action he should take, where you would like to see some attention focused, where would it be?
On the drug sellers. I mean, dealing with the users is just one side of the coin. That's only going to deal with the demand end of the problem. And if you erase the demand end, there are dealers clever enough to create a new market. For every drug seller that you take off the streets, personally, I know you're replaced by 10 the next day. That's not, to me, really addressing the problem at all. It's addressing the symptom of the problem, but not the problem itself. Now, in my estimation, personally, I think, in fact, I know that there are no programs, to my knowledge, in America, save the program that was just started here at Glad Church, that directly addresses the seller, not just as far as its value system is concerned, but it addresses the seller as a person, as an individual, as an injured personality with understanding and compassion.
Are there enough people out there who know what they're doing to approach these drug dealers?
No. The best place I would suggest to approach them is in the jails. That's the only place you can get them contained, as far as my knowledge goes, because you can't approach them on the streets and be successful.
And what kind of people need to approach them?
People like myself that are ex-dealers, that can relate to them, that can talk to them in their languages, that they'll have to respect for my knowledge. They'll have to respect for my experience.
And how much of a dent do you think that kind of thing can make in this problem?
It will make all the difference in my estimation.
Finally tonight, an essay about another divisive